I'm really happy to be here. When I was in school, I did all kinds of stuff to help out like students and stuff, so it's really cool being able to come back and do more of this. So anyway, she talked a little bit about me. This is a little bit less formal. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I came out here for BYU. Actually, the only reason I got in was because I had a music scholarship. I played the drums. That was my thing. And really popular right now is like put your first Facebook picture up and your last. So this is mine. That's my first one when I was probably, 15, 14 or something. You can see I actually kind of look the same. So I thought that was funny, except back then all those necklaces were cool. But then after a while, people told me I couldn't wear those anymore. So anyway, I ended up graduating from BYU in accounting. My first business was a film business. We did film with one of my best friends growing up. And that was really cool, and that's actually what got me interested in doing business stuff, and then I didn't study music anymore, I studied accounting. And then another random cool thing about me is I played in all these bands, including Motion Coaster, which we were on the Frankie and Jess show on 97.1 ZHT, if you guys know that, and we were on my 99.5. So I don't do that anymore. I quit the band so I could focus more on my business when I was doing it on the side. Okay. So she gave me a little bit of an intro, I think. Anyway, so are most of you guys from around this area, right? You went to high school here, or at least have lived here for 5+ years. Is that pretty typical?
I didn't grow up here.
Okay, so yeah, we have a few transplants. That's like me. I've been here since 2010, so 8 years now. But I still say I'm from Virginia, but really I've lived in Utah probably, if you combine everything, longer than I was in Virginia. So that's kind of funny. And then it sounds like a lot of you guys are studying business. How many of you guys like exactly what you're going to be doing? Right? Okay, got just a couple. So it sounds like most of you are probably still figuring it out. And the cool thing about this is it's really going to apply to everybody, right? Whether you already know exactly what you're going to do, if you're going to get a job at a big company, you're going to have your own business, anybody can freelance, right? And you don't necessarily have to do it all the time or very much time at all. And I'm going to talk about that. And so really, really big thing that's happening in the economy right now, but it doesn't get a lot of attention, at least at schools. Like I went to the BYU Business School, and I was in charge of all these clubs, and we would have all these speakers come so people could learn about different careers and all that stuff, and we never had a single person talk about freelancing. Whereas, and I'm going to talk about how actually 1 in 3 US workers are now freelancers, right? And it's going to be over 50% by estimated, 2027. So it's really a big part, and people need to be aware of it. So anyway, we'll talk about that. Okay. A little bit more about how I got into freelancing. We're going to talk about, I'm not going to necessarily go into depth of this right now because she did kind of talk about it, but I worked at these other consulting firms. I used to consult marketing agencies, a lot of marketing agencies, so that's how I learned how they run and how to run them. And then all I was doing was, when I was a project manager at Elmer's, I just started freelancing on the side. And the first thing I actually did was I would have business software companies pay me to use their software for an hour and then leave them a review, right? And I would tell them what I thought about it, oh, this is not good, oh, this is really good, this is better than this other software, and they would pay me $60 to do that for an hour. So that was kind of cool. I started offering Google ads, which is something I did previously at Elmer's, but then I started just doing the Amazon marketing, and I found there was a ton of demand for that. And that, after a while, I just raised my rates a lot. I was making all this money on the side. And then I made the decision to just do this full time. And then, of course, I hired employees, and that's how 5-Star Commerce came about. And I'll go more into depth about that, but that's basically the story. So 1 in 3 American workers now freelance, and then it's actually 47% of millennials, right? So how many here would say you're a millennial? Right? Probably a big chunk, right? I'm a millennial. So it's really a huge amount, a huge percentage of younger people. So it's something you really want to be aware of. Now, the number one reason they say people are choosing freelancing is actually the quality of life, right? So I guess millennials, right, want more flexibility, less of this structured 9-to-5 kind of work environment, and that's what people are getting with freelancers, right? So, and the cool thing about me, like I can be anywhere I want. I just log onto the computer and I can work from anywhere, right? Same thing with all my employees. Now, of course, with technology, that's a lot easier than it was 30 years ago, right? And that's, I'm sure, a big factor in this trend in how people work, right? And then again, yeah, 2027 is when they predict a majority of US workers will be freelancers. So, okay, these are some graphics from some studies that Upwork did. Now, Upwork is a freelance marketplace. That's where I get most of my business. But how I describe it, it's like a search engine for freelancers. But it's actually more than that. Companies will pay through Upwork, and then Upwork makes sure that the freelancers actually get paid. And if they do badly or something, there's kind of a dispute resolution, and they can kind of monitor that and make sure it all works well. And it's really a great platform. I love it, and it's been great for me. Anyway, you'll be able to see a lot of things here. You can see the trends are going up. Millennials, this is where I pulled a lot of that data from. Now, biggest barriers, right? Drawbacks of freelancing, income predictability. A lot of freelancers make a lot of money one month and then less money the other month. It's not with a W-2 job where somebody is kind of guaranteeing it and keeping it steady, right? And then, of course, finding work, you would need to have consistent clients, or at least a client base that you keep working for on a regular basis, and you're not going to get your own benefits, right? Well, you're going to have to get your own benefits. You're not going to have that with you as part of a job like a lot of full-time jobs would have. Well, that was the 2017 one. This is the 2018 one. This is more like what are freelancers like, so probably not as useful. We might come to this if we have questions about it, but feel free to look at this later. Okay, so some of the things that we looked into, I've looked into as far as comparing it, right? With a freelancer, right, it's really like you're an independent contractor, so you have to pay your own taxes, you have to do your own bookkeeping and all that, and that's why as a freelancer, you do need to charge a lot more than a W-2 employee would, right? So the variable earnings is one of the major things you need to think about, right? You're really taking on all this additional responsibility and risk that you don't really get with a W-2 job. Now, of course, the difference with that is a lot of people actually say it's actually a lot safer because you'll have 5, 6, 7, maybe 20 clients instead of just one client like you have at a regular job. Whereas if you lose your job, then it's like you're back to zero, right? But if you lose a client, it's like, not a big deal, and you just find some new ones, right? So it's interesting to think about that difference, but people have to be aware of that. And in some ways, especially with recent trends, might actually be even like less risky to be a freelancer. Anyway, and of course, this is mostly for people who do it full-time, right? If you're doing it on the side, you're not taking on any extra risk, right? It's just extra money. And then, of course, you can set your own schedule. Typically, you can work from anywhere, and you do need to pay for your own benefits, like health insurance, right? Now, with a traditional employee, they're going to be doing the withholding for you. They'll do all the taxes, stuff you probably have never had to really think about. If you've always had just a regular job, you get steady earnings. You only have one client, kind of refer to that. And here's actually a big difference too, is your employer is probably going to train you and provide all this training, right? So if you're doing more stuff on your own, you're responsible for learning and getting new skills and all those things. And then maybe it's more 9 to 5, less flexible, and you might get benefits from your employer, right? Okay. So when I was doing it, I started doing Amazon marketing, and all I really did was add a profile on Upwork, right? So people would find me, they'd search Amazon expert, right? And then I'd show up, and they'd reach out to me, and I started doing just really small jobs. And I had on my profile, I was like, hey, I have a full-time job, I do Amazon marketing full-time. If you want my help, that's great, but it's just got to be limited amounts of time, and it's in my free time, right? So you can't call me during business hours and expect me to help you, right? But I can talk to you while I'm driving home from work, or just in the evening I can send some emails and take care of some stuff for you on when it works for me. And even with that, I still got a lot of people reaching out, right? So that's when it's like, okay, pretty good niche. And I can talk more about like picking a niche or whatever, but that's something that's really, really important. So the common issues people have is finding clients. And it might even be, if you have a really hard time finding clients, it might just be you haven't focused in, you're not specialized enough, right? But if you talk to most freelancers, many of them worry about that. So you've got to make sure you get that figured out, especially if you're going to do it full time or something like that. Like that's got to be really nailed down. And I'll talk to you about how people find them, but there's a lot of different ways. Now, unpredictable income, we talked about that. You've got to monitor that, and typically what that means is you've got to probably charge a lot more than you would expect, right? You cannot charge like maybe a W-2 employee, you might make $15 an hour, and that might be good, but typically you're not going to want to charge $15 an hour as a freelancer. That's like the equivalent of like $7.50 an hour. So you've got to monitor that. And anyway, I kind of talk about that here. Undercharging is a common problem because people don't realize how much a market rate for a contractor really is, and all those other expenses. Now the cool thing about it is like if you go to Upwork and you look for people who are like mid-level, even just starting out, everybody's charging like at least $50 an hour. Which if you're just doing it part-time, and you don't have all these overhead expenses, it's a lot better than you could probably get at a W-2 job, you know? So like I just started doing, I think when I was starting, I did like $50 an hour, and people would pay me like $50 an hour to talk to them on the phone, which would be like 40 minutes. So I just talk to them on the phone while I'm driving home and get like $40. So it's like nice. And that's something all of you guys can start doing within, you know, a relatively short amount of time. You know, maybe a year from now, depending on where you are, you just have to learn a lot about one thing and then offer to talk to people about it. And we can go more in depth on that in the Q&A. So the bookkeeping can be a major issue. Again, if you're just doing it on the side on a limited basis, you don't really have to worry about that until you do it quite a bit and you know it's going to be a little bit more of a steady thing. But of course, if you're a freelancer, you do want to keep track of that. You have to report your income for taxes. You want to keep all your business expenses there so you can deduct them so you're not paying on revenue, right? You should pay taxes on profits. And after a while, you'll probably have, you need to have separate bank accounts, right? Business bank account, personal bank account, and keep all your financials separated. So anyway, I guess I mentioned this here, I already talked about it, but a lot of the time, people are just not specialized enough. Typically, if you're offering services as a freelancer, you don't want to tell people like, oh, I do graphic design, right? You want to tell people, I do graphic design for like Amazon businesses, right? So one of my best friends, the guy who started the film business, he does all these videos and stuff, but he also is really good at graphic design. And he specifically does stuff for Amazon. So his Upwork is like, oh yeah, I do graphic design for Amazon businesses. It's like, not only do I make really good graphics like every other graphic designer out there, but I understand the Amazon marketplace. I understand what types of images you need to have your product sell really well, where to put them, how to design them, how to make them so you can read them really well on mobile when people are swiping through, all those things. And he gets tons of business through that. So normally, it's just a matter of specializing enough. So anyway, that's just something really important to think about. So like when I was doing all the stuff before, I didn't say, oh, I do Google Ads and I review software and I do Amazon marketing. I just picked one and kind of did that for a while and then I switched, right? And that's what you want to do. And then of course there's the issues with managing workflow and task. And this one, I really like that that's an issue because that's I don't like it that it's an issue, but that's normally the competitive advantage of why people pick me and my team over others. Because you remember I was a project management consultant, right? And taught companies how to use project management software in their business. So we're really, really good at that. Everything we do goes through this project management software. Everything is tracked. Nothing falls through the cracks. And most of my competitors are people who they had their own Amazon business, right? So they bought their own products. They sold them on Amazon. They learned a lot about it. But they're not project managers, right? And they're not used to working with clients and talking with clients and communicating and setting expectations. all these other things that I did when I was working at that consulting firm and the Amazon marketing firm. So anyway, I use that and it really works. And that's why on Upwork, we've got like the best ratings because of that. So, okay, a little bit more in depth about finding clients. First, I think I want to actually just get some questions. So maybe we'll skip back just so you don't get distracted. Do you guys have any questions about stuff we've talked about so far that maybe I should dive a little bit more into? If I'm gonna talk about it, I'll just say, like, oh, I'm gonna catch that. But I want to make sure everything's kind of clear so far. Got anybody? Okay, so we're looking good. So yeah, I'm gonna dive a little bit more into depth into all of these, and then I'll talk a little bit more about 5-star commerce at the end. And then of course we'll have time for Q&A. Okay, perfect. Okay, so finding clients, right? Now, pay attention here because really this is, you could start doing all this stuff, at least the first section, all today, right? So I know Whitney talked about LinkedIn. Hopefully you guys are all on LinkedIn. People find you that way all the time. And when people hear about you, they're gonna look at your LinkedIn, right? So you wanna make sure that that is great. Sometimes I get employees that are not on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, gotta do that. Which, I mean, that's not the end of the world, obviously. Everybody starts at a different time, but, you know, if you're serious about your career, you want your LinkedIn to look really good. So, okay, so freelance marketplaces. This is where I get the majority of my business. Now we're kind of doing a lot of other stuff outside of it, but it all started with Upwork, right? And I tried Fiverr. So Fiverr and Upwork are the biggest ones by far. Upwork is bigger than Fiverr, but Fiverr is more of a format where you can search like, oh, I want a graphic designer or whatever, and it'll say like, hey, I'll create this graphic, I'll do this for $5. But the thing is, you never actually pay $5 on Fiverr, right? Because you add tips, and usually the $5 service is incomplete, right? So you really have to get the $15 one, or the $30 one, or the $400 one, right? But Fiverr is a very, very big one, and it's all like set packages, right? So it's like, oh, you order this, and then you just get it, right? So you've got to structure, hey, I'll provide you this, this, and this, and then you get exactly that within a few days. For me, that doesn't work very well, right? Because we're doing project management, we're managing projects over a long period of time. So to tell them like, oh, it's like $1,000 or whatever, and it includes exactly this and exactly that, that's not very useful because every client needs a kind of different thing. So, but for a lot of people, that's really great. Like graphic designers, it's kind of easy to scope out what's included. Like, oh, I'll create like 3 graphics that do this, you know. So anyway, that's Fiverr. Upwork is more like you're hiring people, right? So those companies are going and they want like an expert, and they can pay you flat fees or they can pay you hourly, and you actually track time through the Upwork app. It takes little screenshots every 10 minutes, and it just bills them every week. So that's really cool. That's where I get most of my business, and mostly people type in Amazon expert, I show up, we have like the best reviews. I'll show you our profiles. And then they reach out through that there. And I probably get like 2 or 3 companies reaching out a day just through Upwork. So that's been really good for me. And then there's other specialized ones. So I know there's specialized ones like specifically for designers, and I'm sure every type of thing there's a marketplace for it. We do e-commerce stuff. So 2 other ones are Jungle Scout Market and FreeUp. Now FreeUp is a little bit different. They say that they vet you a little bit more, and instead of companies searching for people and reaching out to freelancers specifically, they actually tell FreeUp, hey, I want somebody who does this, and they kind of just set you up, right? So depending on the situation, that can be really good. I just don't like that one as much because usually the companies that want to pay more go to Upwork instead of FreeUp, but that's another one. And then Jungle Scout Market is kind of like Fiverr, but the only difference is it's specifically for Amazon stuff. So those can be really good. Now, obviously, if you're not doing Amazon stuff, you wouldn't use Jungle Scout Market, but I'm just kind of using that as an example of there's more specialized marketplaces. And whatever you think your niche is, you can find what are those marketplaces, where do people looking for those types of services go, and just make a profile, make a little listing or whatever. Then, of course, you have stuff like networking and advertising. Advertising you don't want to do until later. And really, I've just focused on the marketplaces. Those provided a ton of business. Then I got a little bit more from LinkedIn. And now we're getting a lot of business through networking. And I think that way to go is really kind of the easiest, because creating a profile on Upwork is not very hard. And I've had friends, I help them create a profile on Upwork, and then you just make it really niche and specialized, and you start getting invites, like within a week or two. Right? So Upwork especially, I think, is really, really good. But you've got to make a good profile and everything. A lot of these other ones, I think it's a little bit more competitive, and if you don't have like a ton of reviews, you don't get as much visibility. And one thing I should note about Upwork is, like in Google, you search something and your friend searches something, you're going to see basically the same thing, right? Now, obviously, it might be different depending on your history or whatever, but the company that's ranking for a certain keyword is basically the same one every time. But with stuff like Upwork, they don't do that. They shuffle it all around because they don't want to send all the business to one person, right? Because a person can only handle so much business. So they actually spread it out. And I noticed we get a ton of leads during certain times of the month where it just shows us more. So that's really cool because really, even if you're on there, you make a good profile and you don't have any reviews, you'll still get leads. So anyway, if any of you guys want to start doing that in the next month or so or whatever, or maybe right after class today, that's something you can do and immediately earn some extra money just doing little things for people. Okay, rates and wages. I kind of referred to this, but as a freelancer, you do have to charge a lot more. You'll notice here at the bottom, I have freelancers charge probably between $40 and $300 an hour, whereas employees, you start at $750, and a really high-paid employee might be like $100 an hour or something like that. But usually, when I was if you're doing full-time, you got to charge at least $50, I would say, and that's about equivalent to like $40,000 a year, right? So that's not even necessarily that high. But if you're doing it on the side, you don't have to pay a lot of these costs, and it's a lot of money. So anyway, you got to factor in taxes and overhead. The office, I pay for office space. We have office space, of course. Business internet, bookkeeper. Yeah, if you're doing a lot of it, then you do need a bookkeeper so they can do your taxes at the end of the year and you actually do it correctly. And then, of course, when you get serious about it, you might pay for the website and logo design and branding, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you've got to factor in the time it takes to find clients and talk to new clients. Now, that's part of why I like the Upwork, the freelance marketplaces so well, because they just send you the clients. You don't have to spend time doing it. Spending time networking, right, it takes a long time. You've got to actually go to all those events and stuff, which I do that, but it's mostly just for fun. And then I don't have to like pester people, but they hear about what I do, and maybe they'll come if they're interested, right? They'll talk to me. But that's kind of my approach. And then, of course, you're taking on most of the risk, where as an employee, you're really not taking on much business risk at all, right? If the business loses some clients, it doesn't really affect you necessarily as much. And then you got other people going out and finding the clients, other people paying the overhead and taxes, and usually you're giving your employer a bulk discount, right? Because they're guaranteeing you, say if you're full-time, 8 hours of work, right? You don't have to worry about it. It's always 8 hours. And so they can charge a lot less or pay you a lot less, well, because they're guaranteeing you so much work, right? Whereas if somebody's coming to you and they just want to talk to you for like 1 hour, you're going to charge a high rate because they're not giving you that much business. Anyway, that's kind of how that tends to work. So the cool thing is, like, if you're like even if you say that you're like a college student and you're starting out and you've done a certain thing a few times, you can still do at least 20, 30, 40 bucks an hour, especially after you have like 1 or 2 reviews. So that's cool. Okay, I did talk about this, just kind of coming back to it. Maybe I'll go a little bit more in detail as far as how it felt, but I did not plan on it becoming anything. I really just wanted to earn extra money. And so I did the software reviews, and I got like 200 bucks a month from that, and I was super happy. And I didn't spend much time at all, right? Just made basic Fiverr. I made a Fiverr profile, made a couple Fiverr listings, and that was it. Then I started doing the Google ads. I did that on Upwork, And I didn't want to do Amazon marketing at the time because I was worried like, oh, maybe that's too close to what I do for my full-time job. I don't want to compete with my employer. So I did Google Ads for a while. And that was pretty good. And really, I just told them what I had done in the past. I had 0 reviews, and I still got like 2 or 3 clients in this first month. Right? And I only signed on for short-term stuff, and I gave them like lower rates. Right? And that's the key getting started if you're serious about it. You can charge low rates at the beginning, but don't commit to that low rate for a long period of time, because you might not be factoring in all the other expenses and stuff. But that's a good way to at least get a few reviews. And really, once you have 1, 2 reviews, at least on Upwork, that's like plenty, if they're good. If you get a bad one, then that's a different story. And then after a while, I was doing it on the side, and then I quit my full-time job. And that worked out really well, the timing, because they were just merging with this other company, and I didn't think a lot of the stuff they were doing in the business was going to make a lot of sense, and I was kind of like, I could do this all better. So we actually kind of compete with them now, so I feel bad about that, but that's fine. I didn't sign any non-compete or anything. But yeah, I quit that, and then once you get a lot of business and you have businesses coming and you have all the workload that you can handle, the next step is hire employees, right? And that helps you, so maybe you can double the amount of clients you can have, or triple, or whatever, right? The key there is before you hire employees, you do have to make sure you're charging agency rates, right? So you can't charge $40 an hour and then pay an employee to do that. You're not going to make money, typically, right? Because even if you do direct billing, which is actually what we do, so I pay my employees like $15 an hour for the part-time ones, and then I charge like 60 or 70 an hour, but not all their time is billable, right? So really, out of that 70 an hour, probably $30 of that is going towards the employees, because maybe they have time where I'm training them, where I have to pay them for that, but we're not charging clients for that, right? So you have to factor in all those things. I have all these Excel sheets. I do all the math. I studied accounting, so I always run the numbers. Sometimes when I can't sleep at night, I just get my calculator. I'm like, what if we did this percentage of our time is billable, or this percentage? Anyway, you have to factor that in, but before you hire employees, you do have to make sure you're charging relatively high rates. And that's why you don't want to lock into low rates, right? Because then you're all used up, and you can't get all the new clients that are coming to you willing to pay a lot more. So anyway, that's what I did, and luckily, since I worked at that consulting firm, I already knew how to manage employees and hire people and stuff. I did all that. So that was a really, really good work experience for me. Okay. Great, we're doing great on time. Now, I mentioned this earlier. Here's our profiles. So in Upwork, you have the job success score. We got the top rated badge on both of them. Now, that's not actually the percentage of your jobs that are successful. There's actually some big algorithm that goes into that. It's like how many of your clients stay on and work with you continually for long term, all types of things along with your reviews. And there's public feedback that people see on your profile. And clients are like, oh, I love working with 5-star commerce, they're great. But there's also private stuff that you don't see, and that all gets factored in. So yeah, anyway, mine's 100%, and that's great. I think there's only like last time I checked, there's only one other person that did Amazon stuff that had 100%. So we're doing great there, and then the agency is at 99% right now. And you can see the rates, right? That's what we charge now, and really we're probably that shows 50, that's probably different now. I used to charge 50, now we do 70. Cool. Now, a couple things you'll notice about this. So if any of you create an Upwork account soon, you'll see, right, in the headline I have exactly what they're looking for, and that's what people are searching, right? So people search Amazon expert, right, or they search Amazon PPC, Amazon SEO, right? So that's why I have that there. So when they're going, they'll see that, and they'll see the first 2 lines of the profile. So they'll see that, and then they'll see that review from a client, and that's usually enough to get them to click in. Now they can click more, and there's tons and tons of details. And I talk about all my unique selling points, right? Now at first I was like, oh, I specifically do Amazon, and then I realized, most of my competitors have never managed Amazon accounts in a corporate environment, right? They just did their own private label products. So that's what I started advertising. It's like, I'm a project manager, and I've run Amazon accounts for actual, like, real big businesses. People love that, right? And then I noticed that for Amazon stuff, people always underestimate how much work you have to do, because there's all these issues that come up. Like sometimes you'll want to change something, but even though it shows up on your end, you go to Amazon.com and it didn't change on the listing. Right? So then you have to contact Amazon support and get them to push it through on their end. There's all kinds of issues like that. So actually, if I charged hourly, I could make way more money, and it was easy to upsell, right? Because maybe if I did a flat fee, they'd be like, oh, we just need you to go through and optimize our listing one time, right? But if they do hourly, I can go through, optimize the listing, and I can charge whatever hourly rate I want, because the higher I charge, they just think I'm better. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, for sure. So anyway, that's kind of one of our selling points too, is we just do it all hourly. But a little bit more as far as the Amazon stuff. So if you look at an Amazon listing, and maybe I can just pull up Amazon.com right now. Now, just like with Google, there's all these companies that do regular internet marketing, and usually they do SEO, so help companies show up higher in Google. We do that exactly for Amazon, right? So the key is you got to think of Amazon as a search engine and not just a regular website. So a lot of it is we design the titles, and we put a lot of thought and time into that. We're always testing different titles, but the most important keywords we'll put in the titles. And then we design these bullets, right? And you can notice we design them in a way so they're easily skimmable, right? So people can just read through these and get the main selling points. And then, of course, they can read the whole thing if they want a little bit more details. But most people in Amazon, they're just skimming. You got to be really fast. Now, we also make sure to put important keywords in here as well, and that all gets factored into Amazon's algorithm, right? Then the main part here is these images. Now, on mobile, most people will just swipe through those images, and so we need them to be really good. In fact, data shows that 100% of Amazon customers that buy a product, they look at every single image. But only a third of those people read any of the listing, right? So those images are really, really important. So we'll go through with clients and design those. Now, their first one has to be this picture with the product and a white background. But there's other combinations we could do. We can include the packaging or take out the packaging. We could do different angles, all kinds of stuff there. Sometimes for supplements especially, we add those badges like NSF certified or FDA approved and such, which we're technically not supposed to do that, but then we add them and the sales just go up. So we do that, but then sometimes Amazon will kind of catch you, and then you just got to put it back the regular white background. But we'll do all these split tests for their images, and then we design all of these. So this is one I used to work on at my old company, but have a little comparison graphic and say, yeah, these Orion coolers, notice the price on these. This is a $479 cooler, right? So yeah, it was tricky getting these started. I'm like, how do we get people to buy these? But to show them, there's all these extra features, right? And then we have this with the badges, we have the sizes, right? We don't want them to read any of the listing. We want all the information right there. This is just another angle. Then we have lifestyle photos and a video, right? So that's a lot of what we would do. Then there is this section down here. It's called Enhanced Brand Content. And we can build this out. There's like a little web page builder. And we put in these images and we design it. Now, this one is like, I would say probably a little bit more text. If I was still working on this company, then I would trim it down. But we have these comparison tables so they can see all the different sizes and all that. So we design those. And then there's also the storefronts. So companies, they have to be brand registered, so they have to prove to Amazon that they own the trademark, but they can build these little websites within Amazon. We can have videos and all this. And we can also run ads that send people to these storefronts, right? And then, so that's just the listing optimization, right? And that's really the main key. Like, first thing I'm going to do with every brand is optimize their listings. Because if the listings don't look really good and get people to sell, then there's nothing, none of the other stuff is going to be useful, right? But there is also the ads, right? So I made this one. I remember this was a year ago, by the way. But we have these headline search ads we design, and these we can actually make the headline, which most Amazon ads you don't. Most Amazon ads are like these. These are sponsored product ads, and all you're doing is paying just to show up higher, right? It's not even really an ad in the real sense, but every time somebody clicks one of these, we pay a certain amount, right? So for a certain keyword, if we want to show up more and get more clicks, we're going to raise our bid, and that tells us, we tell Amazon we're willing to pay up to this much per click, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, but basically if you pay more, they're going to show you more, and then you'll get more clicks, but it's going to cost you more money, right? So for each keyword, we've got to figure out how high are we willing to go, right? So we, in the ad platform, which I could really even log in and show you some stuff, but in the ad platform, we have all the keywords for each product, and we move those bids up and down. So if we're spending too much, we'll move it down. If we're willing to spend more, we move it up. And we're always monitoring that. Now, here's the tricky part, right? If we do something to the listing and the listing is better and more people buy it, then we can go in and raise all the bids on the ads, right? Because our conversion rate's higher, we're getting more sales, so it's okay, we can spend more. And that's why you've got to have a really good listing. Because if your listing's not very good, then people just keep clicking your ads and you keep lowering the bids. Well, eventually, you're not going to get shown at all, right? So a lot of time when companies will come to us, like I have this supplement brand I just started with on Friday, but their ACoS, which is the average cost of sales, is how much they're spending compared to how much dollar sales they're getting from the ads, was like 200%. So they're paying $100 for $50 in sales. Obviously not sustainable, but it's really just because their conversion rate is not high enough. And their bids are too high. And they told me like, oh, well, we would lower the bids, but when we lower the bids, then the traffic goes down. Well, yes, it's going to do that. And the key in the long term is you just need to have a better listing, right? So I'm working with them on that. But we design these, and we can send people to the listings, or we can send people to the storefront. And then I've already figured out what kind of headlines do the best. Like the best headline is always, it starts with the, and then you say whatever it is that the target market trusts, right? So like I have this supplement brand that does supplements for eyes. So we have like the eye supplements optometrist trust, right? And all these different versions of that. That works every time. This one is kind of funny, so I tried it, and it actually works pretty well. Bears hate Orion coolers because they're bear-proof, right? So usually I don't do that, but that one worked for that brand. So anyway, we're running all of these and managing all of that. Now, there is also all the logistics, right? Because they have to, with Amazon, you ship all your inventory into Amazon first, and then when people buy the product, Amazon ships it out, right? So it's a little bit different, and that's why when you shop on Amazon, it feels like you're just buying stuff straight from Amazon, right? Because it's coming from their warehouse. It'll come in an Amazon box, right? Now, there is the options companies can send it from their own warehouse, but that's less common now. And usually, it's only certain types of products you would want to do that because people want their free 2-day shipping, right? And you get that if it's in their warehouse. So. Great. So yeah, I think for now, maybe we can stop and do Q&A, and we'll go from there. Okay. What are you guys thinking about? All right. What questions do you have? Over here.
So what is the most important advice you would give someone starting to build their profile network?
Yeah. I would say be really specialized, right? So just pick something and just focus on that 100%. And then look at all the other people doing that and see if there's anything else, like differences you could point out that might be useful, right? And so that's exactly what I did, right? I do Amazon marketing for these brands or whatever. And then I looked at everybody else, and I realized they all had their own Amazon businesses. They didn't work at an Amazon marketing firm. So I just noted that, right? And here's the thing, too, is just start small, right? Because when you make your profile, it's not like you're going to get a bunch of companies calling the next day. But you can make it pretty good. You know, maybe in a week or so somebody reaches out, maybe 2 weeks, whatever. But I would say just start really small, right? And just have it up there, and so it's available. And then maybe 2 weeks goes by and you don't have anything. Take another look at it, make it better, you know. But that's exactly what I did. Is I didn't like focus on it a ton, and then it feels like it's growing really fast, right? Where if you just wanted to do it like 100% right from the beginning, then it would feel like it's going slow. So anyway, that's that. And I would say also just have it kind of going now, right? Because say, for example, you have a great job, right, and you love it. There's no reason to freelance. However, you might want to do a little bit on the side just to earn extra money, but really do like 1 or 2 little things so you have like 2 reviews, right? So then if you ever, maybe you don't like your job as much as you used to, or you ever lose your job, you can just turn that back on. You've already got a few reviews and at least make some money while you're looking for your next job. So it's really cool security thing. And that really changes your attitude actually when you have other options, right, of your job. Like if you don't like your boss after a while, you're like, I don't have to stay here. So anyway, it's smart to have multiple options and not be totally reliant on just one job. Okay. What else? Oh, right here.
You to become a freelancer?
Well, mostly I didn't make as much money as I wanted to, right? So usually at marketing firms, marketing firms don't pay that much. Like I studied accounting, so all my friends. Oh, and I was in the leadership for the consulting club at BYU. So all my friends were making like 60, sometimes 80 grand, depending on what city they went into. Now, of course, they're working tons of hours, and a lot of time they're in big cities where it's really expensive. But I was only making 40 grand at that job. So I just wanted to make extra money. And the boss, you'll run into this a lot, especially at small companies, where they'll say like, oh, we'll start you at this rate, but then we'll like really ramp it up later. We just got to get you on board, and then we have all these new clients coming in. It's going to be great. But then it doesn't work out as well as they expect, right? So that was basically me. Is like he didn't give me enough raises after a while, so I just wanted to make extra money. And yeah, eventually I just made too much money. And so I said, oh, well, okay, sorry. So anyway, and that's a lesson to me too, right? I keep ramping up my employees' pay because I don't want them to leave and just freelance, right? Because I know they have that option. So that's cool. But yeah, that's why I started. Oh, and I guess I should go back a little bit, is I did have this experience where I interned at American Airlines one summer, and I hated that. I was in Dallas, Texas. I had like no friends down there. But I remember I got there on the first day. And obviously American's the biggest airline in the world. And I remember we had all these cubicles, and big cubicles, nice desk and stuff. But I remember I got there and they just went on and on and on and on. It was like maybe in like National Treasure or something like that, where they turn on the lights for the warehouse and the lights just go and it just keeps going back. That's what it was like, right? And I was like, oh crap, this is not going to be good. And I think it took me about like 4 hours until I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But I was there the whole summer, and they gave us like an internship calendar, and I would every day I would go and mark an X on the day, and it felt like in prison, when they're keeping track of the days. It was terrible, and that actually changed all my life plans, right? I was head of in charge of the consulting club. I was running this IMA accounting club, and I was always going to work for really big companies, and that changed everything. I was like, I don't want to work for giant companies. I want to work for small companies and eventually have my own business. And that's what I did. I quit everything. I told the master's program I wasn't going to do the master's, and I didn't apply for any jobs after that. And I just went back and worked at that little consulting firm that I interned before. And here's what happened, by the way. I was working there part-time while I was finishing up school part-time. But then the owner left and joined a client company and became their COO. And so then it was me and this other guy, Brad, running the company, right? And there was a bunch of part-time employees, which I was even part-time, actually. We were both, everyone was part-time. But then he got sick, and he left. So I ran that company for a year. So it was really cool. I would have like these big companies call me while I was in like finance class. Like I think the third biggest company car company in the world that's headquartered in Japan. I can't actually tell you which one they are. But they I remember one day they called me while I was in finance, and I like stepped out and I was like, wow, this is really legit. So it's interesting actually the opportunities you get when you work at a really small company like that. And if you're actually just like, interested in learning everything. So that was super useful for me. And that's why like for me, it's really not, it really wasn't that tricky, like getting everything and hiring people and managing all of it, because I had already done it before. But yeah, that's why, is because I hated working at that big company. So then I did small companies, and then I wasn't getting paid as much as I wanted.